Happy New Year. This is Perfect Tips for Perfect Success, and it's our first for the new year, 2021. 2020 was a challenge for all of us, and so fittingly, we've invited Melanie Escalante back. She's a professional and personal coach, and we're going to talk about what some of that learning from 2020 was and how do we parlay that into a new year to set ourselves right professionally and personally. So allow us to welcome back Melanie. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Deirdre. Thanks so much. Good to be here again, and thank you for the opportunity. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to the listeners for Perfect Tips for Perfect Success.
So tell us, 2020 was indeed a challenging year, and no doubt there were a lot of adaptations and a lot of considerations that people had to make, both personally and professionally. Some of us had to deal with loss, some of us had to deal with professional changes, personal changes, family changes. So how do you look at a year that has been so momentous in so many different ways, and how do you get that into perspective?
Yeah, well, I would say, obviously, it's not one size fits all, right? Each person's experience is different, but I can speak from the perspective of having worked with a number of people on an individual basis throughout 2020. And I will say that evidently, and I think, look, it's a new year. So at a time when it's a new year, many people are thinking about what they've learned and how significant their life is, and if they're making the right moves and the right contribution to the world. And so whether there's the COVID pandemic or not, that's something that we're faced with. But to me, it was more magnified because of the COVID pandemic. And so what I found was people coming to the coaching space because they were stuck. They were stuck in what next, or stuck in, facing potential mortality or a health threat, at least, that is an equalizer for everybody, because everybody was facing that threat. And so, it kind of caused some people to get a little bit deeper into looking at their life and, are they doing what they should be doing? Could they be doing more? What next steps to take if they are going to do more? And really, I noticed with a number of my clients, it was about, just that significance, really, wanting to make an impact, wanting to make their life count. And so we spent a lot of time in that space looking at what they can do to identify what that difference maker is, that unique thing about themselves, so that they can put that to work and maximize their contribution to the world.
And when you're talking about this reflection and this self-assessment, what were some of the tips that you gave them to kind of let them set at ease or step back and then be able to make those markers and make decisions to be able to set everything right for a new year, and life continues?
Yeah, well, honestly, as much as I can, I try to stay out of the tips or the advice giving, although it's a natural thing for us to find ourselves in when people are questioning what next or how to go about a certain phase in their life. And I will tell you that one common thread with most of my clients led us into the vision space, which is why I also changed my niche this year, because I found so much demand for this, to really get a vision either for your life or for your business, and then put some strategies in place in order to get there. So prior to that, I had considered my niche to be performance and life coaching. But this 2020, it really took a turn into, let's get clear on what you want. Where do you want to go? So what do you want for your business, or what do you want for your life, and where do you want to go? And really then talking about advice, you find that people generally know what they want. Sometimes you have to declutter some of the thoughts in your mind to get clear on what that is. But as soon as you get through the decluttering, people know what they want. And then they just need the space to kind of brainstorm, look at what the gaps are between where they are now and where they want to go, and then start looking at what do they need to do to close some of those gaps. And so sometimes, depending on the issue that would come up, I would be asked, or I would offer some kind of input, some suggestions. But whenever I do that, it's really just from an ideas perspective, without any expectation that people are going to take my advice or my ideas, but just to get the brainstorming going, because sometimes it's hard to get it going without anything to break the block, the mental block that you might have. And so really that's what happened for me in 2020, is that clients moved more to that vision space. And then I realized I could be effective in that space with them. And I transitioned my own niche in 2020 to be a vision and strategy coach as well.
Well, it's a new year, but it's only day 2. So if you were supposed to tell somebody to embark on this decluttering process, what are the questions that you would tell them to ask themselves to begin to throw things out through the window and on the cutting floor, and then pulling it a little closer, others a little closer, and said, this I want to keep, and definitely this is, but this is just a figment of my imagination, or this one is just a fantasy, or this one is for love only, that kind of thing. What are those decluttering questions that need to be asked?
I think really comes down to one key question, and it's a simple question, and it's why. So it's really, why do you think that? Or why do you want to do that? Or why is that important to you? Sometimes it could be where, like, where does that come from? And kind of looking into some of your personal experiences, or your history, or your thinking patterns, as to where that comes from. But and also what do you want to do with it? Now that you see it, like you said, you come to the point where, do you want to keep it? Do you want to let it go? Do you want to just hold it in awareness so that you can measure your perspective, So it's really the basics, the what, the why, and the where,
Well, those critical W's are quite important.
More than anything, really, is to just get some perspective on what you want. Many people don't spend the time in that space, and so they find that life happens to them as opposed to them directing where they want to go.
What do you tell somebody when you ask them that question? What is it you want? And the person, they may have multiple things, well, I want to grow my business. I want to be good at what I do for my business. But I also want to give service to my country. And I always was interested in maybe doing this, or maybe working in this area. But they're not in any of those spaces to be able to do those. Where they're at right now, they're not in the space to capitalize on that. And then there's a lot of different little pieces that don't necessarily seem to fit together because they have all these varied likes or interests. How do you then start honing that down?
Well, again, because it's in the coaching space, you have to trust that your client knows what's important to them, and that they're the expert then in their own lives. So you don't want to assume anything. And so it really is going through that questioning phase, right? And just looking at, then asking, is there any one of those things that seems to pull on your heart more than any other? Is there any reason why you would think that you should do one rather than another? If so, which one might that be? So it really is just a lot of questions to help them kind of come to that space of honing in on whatever that is. And because I talk about going into the strategy space, once people decide what they want, especially if we can look at it on a big picture scale, like what do you want for your life in general, or what do you want for your business? Where do you want your business to be? What is the outcome you're hoping for from all your interventions? Because there are many aspects that you could look at. You could look at health, you could look at relationships, you could look at physical fitness. You could look at just life in general or business, all of those areas. So like you said, there's a multitude of different areas. But if we could ask, if you were to pick one, which one rises to the top, just to get started. Because as you get started, you find that if it's that, the right questions and the right strategy will start to follow that. And if it's not that, maybe the second thing or the third thing that you had in your mind starts to show itself as being more important. And so it's really not an exact science.
A new year comes with anticipation, but a lot of nervousness as well. Am I going to make the most of this year? And all of those anticipations and trepidations start creeping in. What do you say about that? What do you say? You know your direction, you've decided it, but these start creeping in. How do you tell them to manage those anxieties and trepidations about having a whole new blank slate laid out in front of them?
Yeah, I think first of all, acknowledge emotions. That they seem to have a life of their own, and so we don't want to necessarily resist them. But when we see them come up, we say, okay, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling nervous, but have a plan. That's what I would say is really what can be a difference maker, because you can revert to your plan as the next steps to take, and take action. Even in spite of the nervousness, take action, because it's in the action that you gain momentum. And that energy around nervousness tends to turn into energy for doing something positive that's going to move you forward, so long as you take the action. The bottom line is that sometimes we can't see ourselves making progress. I was thinking about this the other day. If you think about a child, a baby, having a baby, and you're with that child through the first, all their life, so at least from childhood to adulthood, and you don't see on a day-to-day basis all the growth steps that they take. You do acknowledge some significant milestones, like being able to walk, being able to talk, and then starting school, and then starting high school, and some of those things, right? You have a girl, maybe even menstruation or something like that, right? Significant milestones that come up in a young human's life. And then before you know it, they're 20, and they're accomplished. And then they're talking about work and taking care of themselves and getting to that interdependent stage. And then they're talking about a partner, marriage, children, etc. Right? So, I'm just saying, I saw this picture of this is the cycle of life. And so sometimes in our success journey, in our vision journey, we don't see the progress. Just like the baby, we don't see the baby growing. We don't see the progress with every step that we take. And sometimes we can be a bit discouraged by that. But if we get 5 years down the road, and then we're able to look back 5 years retrospectively, now we're in infant school, we're like, oh my goodness, look at how far I've come because I took the steps, So just take the next step in front of you that you can see, and another step will reveal itself. And so you will grow in your life or in your business.
Well, thank you very much, Melanie. Declutter, ask the critical W's, do the gap analysis, make a plan, and act. The steps will reveal themselves one after another. So tell us how to reach you again, so that we can all look out for you and we can make that contact to get your guidance.
Yeah, thanks. Coachingwithmelanie.com, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram.
Well, thank you, Melanie. Thank you very much for this discussion. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something from it. I hope that even though we try not to give tips, as Melanie said, you've gotten some good advice and you've gotten a space to start from. But don't forget, it's always good to have a guide. It's always good to touch base. So touch bases with Melanie and stay in touch with Perfect Green and Perfect Tips for Perfect Success as we walk 2021. It's a brand new year with a brand new slate. 365 days in front of us. We're just at day 2, so stay tuned with us. Thank you for joining.
Happy New Year.